when people think of ceramics, they think of like movie Ghost and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I can't get rid of that question. Everybody asks.
Yeah, we're doing basic
I
here.
know. Global. It's like everybody asks. That's the first thing that pops into mind.
See, those are the annoying questions. So just so you know, don't ask a ceramicist about Ghost. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So we're here for a special edition at Emma Choi's art studio. And we're going to talk about the evolution of Korean ceramics. So Emma is a Korean ceramicist. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about how you got started in ceramics?
Well, I didn't start ceramics in Korea. I started in America. Well, I was always doing art, fine art, and I was more of a painter / drawer. But then my cousin, he was majoring in ceramics in Newport at that time, and I went to visit him during Thanksgivings and like spring break, and I loved the studio and I loved the feel of the clay and how they had so many different ways to make it. It's just like unlimited ways of making ceramics other than wheel throwing. So I just got really inspired by it.
Because it's a very practical art form, and when you think about it, in the old ways, you always need, like, they were like shoes. You always needed to have ceramics for your house.
Right.
Then you can't just go to the store to buy your housewares. You always needed some ceramicist, and then I guess the better ones were the more beautiful ones, and so it had kind of like a more value to it.
Right.
And so this is the kind of classic Korean ceramics that we know of. Like, can you describe like why that's so classically Korean?
Well, it's not a good version because I made it.
So humble.
But this is called 달항아리. So like exact translation in English is moon jar. Because it's supposed to have that moon shape. And I guess what's classically, well, it's like traditional Korean moon jar, but it's like so popular these days because a lot of famous people, BTS bought it. RM bought a moon jar, but
it's very smooth. It's very simple in color.
Yes, and also I think it depends on the artist. It's a different form, even though it's just a round jar.
So the roundness has like a unique
feeling.
characteristic.
Yeah.
You can tell who made it by the roundness.
Yes. So some people might have it more bulky in the middle. Some people might have it a little bit more sharper. It's just like slight difference that makes it look totally different.
So then the second thing that is really associated with Korean ceramics in the way that I've learned about it is the color, the celadon color. So we have the off-white cream moon color, and then like the greenish color, which you've kind of made a different take on. But what is the celadon?
Celadon is the greenish color. So moon jars were always made white from porcelain, Korean porcelain. But celadon, you make it with a different clay in Korea, and you put the celadon glaze on it, which has that very green, emerald green, or more clear emerald green feeling to it.
And that process comes in the kiln burning process?
Yes.
Not the clay itself.
Well, the clay itself, I think Korean people use special clay for celadon glaze, but it's not necessary.
But that's not where the color comes from.
No, it's the glaze. And Korean and Asian culture, they started the celadon glaze, so it's kind of known as an oriental.
And it's not necessarily Korean? Did it start in Korea or China?
I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure where it started, but it could be China, it could be Korea. But I think a lot of Korean celadon ceramics were kind of widely known to be most elegant. Or I could be wrong.
Well, and I also heard that like it was used in the palaces a lot because there was a superstition that if your food was poisoned, that it would show up. But
Isn't
that
it
was
silver?
and some of the silver pieces. But I heard that the celadon, that wasn't true.
No, it can't
doesn't
be.
show up poison.
No.
So
It can't be.
yeah. So if Putin is thinking of getting celadon, ceramic ware is not going to help you out.
No.
Just keep those food tasters. So then let's talk about some of your ways that you have innovated this. So this is sort of a moon jar?
Yes, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it was inspired from the original moon jar, but then I made it with puncturing holes on it.
And this was part of your series called Puncture?
Yes.
To kind of symbolize puncturing your, like, the wounds that we carry from life.
Well, that too. Well, it could have all different kind of meanings depending on the viewer. But when I first started, it was kind of because everybody was asking, like, oh, why don't you make stuff like moonjar? Why are you always making something so abstract? I don't understand what it is. Like, Korean people like to see it and like know it.
Right.
They don't
know what they're getting and what they're going to put on their shelf.
Right. So, and they love the moon jar so much these days. So everybody's like, why aren't you making a moon jar? Why aren't you making? Can you make a moon jar? So I was like, oh, this is so frustrating.
Because moon jars are a little boring for you?
It's not that. It's just, I didn't think it was that creative.
So boring.
Yeah. So I was like, trying to come up with new concept for the exhibition, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll try making a moon jar, and I made it, and I was like, all these people asking me to make a moon jar, and
so you have their
destroy
frustration.
It kind of in a way.
So it's a deconstruction of the classic moon jar. That's kind of like your rebellion of like conforming to the norm, but yet creating something new out of it.
But then the more I started making it, because I had to make about like 4 or 5 different moon jars to get the right shape. So the more I started making it, I kind of understood why people made it. It was, I don't want to say fun, but it's like how I said that every single moon jar is different depending on who made it and what the feeling is. It's just like a slight difference you would do that makes it so different.
So your personality started to come through, and it felt good that like your expression was coming through this.
And when you're making it, you're thinking, okay, I was thinking, I don't know what other moon jar people are thinking, but I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna make a moon. I'm gonna make a moon shape. I'm gonna make a moon shape. But then, this doesn't look like a moon, but I kind of really like the shape, So it became more and more, making moon jar is way different than what I thought. It's not that simple. It's very hard, but at the same time, it's also kind of, what do you call it? Meditating at the same time.
Right, because it is very, you're going towards like a flawless simplicity.
Right.
And so there's a lot of like concentration you have to do with it, but then at the same time you can't overthink it.
Exactly. And also because you have to come out in the middle to make the circle shape, and clay has tendency to collapse because of gravity. So you have to kind of think about how much you're going to go out and how much you're going to make today and how much you're going to let it dry before you start again. And if you let it dry too much, then you can't go out as much. It's just like all these different factors that go in.
And so you put one inside of another. So we'll do a close-up of this, but there is a jar within a jar. Why? It's fascinating. So like you can, if you have holes in something, you want to look inside and then you get to see something inside.
I think it was more visual, because at first I thought just making a moon jar with holes in it could look kind of boring. and you do want to look inside if there's holes inside. So making a jar within that, when you look, it makes like that illusion of you're looking at a hole inside, but then there's another holes inside. So
yeah, so it's sort of like a galaxy, and it really does rebel against that because that is also practical. You can use it.
You can.
But you cannot fill anything.
Yeah.
You can't use this to fill up. The water can't stay in there. It's not
Can't
a
be a
vase.
vase.
So it just has to be art.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And that's a statement. So then I was surprised though of the reception, and I want you guys to also chime in. There is apparently a thing called trypophobia where like people have fear of lots of holes. And so there were some people who were even scared to look at your exhibition, or some people couldn't even walk in to the exhibition gallery.
Yeah, I had no idea, but I had a friend who had fear, trypophobia.
Trypophobia, I guess, or trypophobia.
Yeah, so I knew he had it because I have another artwork by somebody that I used to assist, and she also makes like round things, and she like makes punctures little holes in it, and every time he would come to my house he would put a towel over it, and I was like, oh, why'd you put a towel over that? And he's like, oh, I can't look at that, I have trypophobia.
Wow.
So when I was making it, I was actually thinking, oh no, he can't come to my show. And when he did to support, but then he couldn't walk in because it was just too much. He just went
to the front door of the gallery. So even like apparently like the phone cameras now, the smartphones have so many cameras on the back. Even that scares people.
Yeah. Oh really?
So like, you know, the iPhone has three cameras.
Is it 3 or 4? Yeah, 3.
And then like now the new Samsung has like 4. So even that's freaking people out.
This could sound weird, but what if somebody has really big pores?
Maybe that freaks people out too. Well, this kind of looks like somebody with big pores. So what was the moon jar concept on this one?
Well, this is what I started with by puncturing it, and then I got really fascinated with making moon jars, so I just kept making. But then I want to make something that when I don't puncture all the way in. And you have to make this indentation when it's pretty wet, not too dry.
So when it's vulnerable. So you might be able to, you mess up.
Yes.
You could break it.
Not break it, but it moves when I make the indentation. And I liked that kind of feeling.
That.
Yeah.
Even it was a challenge.
Right.
Like surfing or something.
It's kind of like I would make what I would think is a perfect moon jar and then kind of make it move as I make the indentation, so it's not perfect anymore.
So there's some kind of rebellion against this classic perfection going on with this whole like kind of series. Then what is this? This is also a reminiscent of I think where people used to put a lot of wine.
Oh, is it? Oh.
And then, but you put like also
holes.
Well, it's easier to hold now. Though.
Well, I think I had about like 6 or 7 of these like different small white porcelain jars at that time, and it like most of the shapes I kind of looked up at Korean traditional ceramic wares and got the basic shape from them. What would you say? Like destroyed.
Destroyed, so a lot of destruction. So then let's talk about some of your more abstract pieces. So this was from your most recent collection, and then this was the collection before. And what was the concept from the abstract collection?
This is interesting. I didn't even think about this, but also these came about because I started puncturing. There was this round, 2 like perfect round pieces that I punctured what looked like a nail, like a really long nail through it, because at the time I was kind of like really frustrated with people asking me to make something conventional.
Like this?
Yeah.
Like the moon jar.
Right. So I was like, oh, let's just kind of puncture everything.
And you punctured it with nature. Like this is an actual real
wood
branch. So.
But then it started from there, and then I got the shapes and concept from there. But then it went a little bit more me of being not. It's like the whole. I don't want it to feel like it's so aggressive.
Because there's something delicate. It's almost like eggshells. Like there's some sort of like kind of fragility here.
Right. So yeah, I wanted to have that kind of nature feeling, and at the same time make something that seemed impossible with ceramics, because in ceramics these are all made separately and stuck together after they were made, because it's impossible to make it like this,
right? Because
of gravity and like all different kinds of things, and especially having like wood bend through it, because it's hard to have ceramic bend through it at the end, because it's so hard. It's not malleable after it's fired.
Right. Yeah. So then we have some like samples of clay here. So what are some of the? You've kind of shared some of your frustrations with like clay, like yeah, right, like where it comes from, like whether it's sourced from Korea, sourced from outside. So what are some of the differences with the materials?
Well, Korean clay. Well, first of all, to be honest, I didn't study in Korea. I didn't, learn all different kinds of Korean clay. So when I first moved back and tried to make things with Korean clay, because in Korea, there's many, many different kinds of clays, but there's, I think, only one clay that's hand building clay. Sculptural clay, should I say. So, and it's very brittle. So brittle. Yeah, brittle. So after you make it, it kind of like
cracks.
Yeah, cracks.
One of the things that a ceramicist is first criticized on, like it's one of the biggest points, like, oh, there's a crack there. Right.
Well, it depends. Like if it's intentional, it's okay. But if it's not, you have to remake
everything.
So, yeah. So I do use one or two Korean clay. This is Korean clay.
And it's less expensive?
Less expensive because it's from Korea, I guess.
But if you use Korean clay around the world, then it'll be more expensive.
Yeah.
So then why would you use Korean? Well, to get the color, this almost looks like the moon jar color.
It's a little different because in Korea there's about like 5 or 6 different kinds of porcelain clays that you can get, and this is a different kind that's a little bit more ivory. And I tried this clay. I like the color. That's why I use it. But then it's not very easy to hand build with it because most of Korean clay are for throwing or making pots. So to make like sculptural pieces, it's very hard to use it. So like with this clay, I wouldn't be able to
do something like
this. Yeah.
So then what kind of clay do you need to have for more delicate pieces?
Well, delicate, or I would say more sculptural. I use American clay.
And is there a place in America where it comes from, or is it?
Well, in America, they have a lot of commercial clays, and they have different brands. And these are all American clays.
Oh, these are all American clays. Okay, so you can get like a red colored clay and then the white colored clays.
These are porcelain. This is porcelain. This is paper clay. And this is Russian River, which is not. Oh well, it's like there.
But, so wait, if you want.
Oh, careful!
Oh no, I broke it.
It's okay. It's okay because it's not fired yet. It's okay.
Oh my god, I broke
That's what happens when you do ceramics, and we're very used to it. I'm not angry.
Oh my god.
We're very used to this.
So that's the red. So that's like a terracotta color.
Yeah, not exactly though. This is not terracotta because when you fire it, it comes out a little bit more brownish.
Oh, so the color changes even of the clay after you fire it up. And then so she has a kiln over in the next chamber, especially for this purpose, and it's kind of amazing. Like you could just like, it's almost like you're done with your recipe and you cook it.
Yeah.
And then how long does that take?
It depends on what firing range you're doing. I usually do high fire, which goes up to 1,250 Celsius.
Wow.
But then you can't just go up to 1,000 Celsius and go back down. You have to have, because there's certain temperature where the glaze starts to melt, and all these things happen inside, so you have to like time it right. So you have to fire it at least twice. First the bisque firing, which
and that's without the glaze.
Without the glaze, that's the wet clay. Well, dried up like this like would that. Go in bisque, which goes up to 700 degrees, and it would come out kind of plasterish like. So then you can glaze on it.
Then you glaze it, and then you do it again to get the glaze to stick.
Yes.
And that's why, like, 'cause I was always wondering, like, how can you have like these glazed cookware go into the oven?
Right.
But you told me once, like, well, when we make it in the kiln, it goes up to
way
like
up.
2 or 3 times the temperature of your oven.
So it's fine to use it in conventional, household ovens, because how strong does it go? Like 400?
400 Fahrenheit. So maybe I've seen Celsius maybe as high as 230. So you're saying just the first one is 700 Celsius, and then it goes up to, you said 1200, 1400?
Yeah, 1200.
So okay, so you can. That's why you can put a Le Creuset into your oven, and it's no problem.
No problem.
I was like,
all.
this is like paint should melt. I don't understand.
Right? Yeah. But yeah, so the firing, usually the first fire takes about, for me, it takes about, I'll say, and you have to wait for it to cool down, so it takes about like 18 hours.
Wow.
And then
from like firing then to cool down 18 hours?
Until you open it and...
you let it cool down inside.
And then glaze fire, second fire usually takes about a little less than 24 hours.
Wow. Okay. So then this, just for the glazing part, would take like at least 3 days. I mean, just for the get it from firing to glazing finished products, 3 days without the actual molding of it.
And this one, I think I glaze fired it about 3 times.
So if you want it extra glazy, you put more glaze and then fire more glaze and fire.
Or it's, if you don't like the way it looked the first time, you can refire it. It depends, because sometimes it's not good for the glaze to be fired too many times. But this is like, in this light it looks kind of brownish, but if you have a right spotlight, you saw that it looks a little more metallic,
and right now like I see green, and so it looks like stone.
Right. So this is like a metallic glaze that has to have the exact right temperature. It can't go up like a little bit more than it doesn't come out right. So I kind of had to do it 3 times to get the right color.
So then for your next exhibition, what are you thinking of doing? More moon jars to satisfy public demand and then deconstruct it, or something else?
It depends, but unfortunately, I am kind of thinking about going back to
your roots of abstract. And why not?
Yeah, abstract art, because it was amazing. It was like I kind of had to do it once, but I don't think it resonates exactly who I am as an artist.
So is there any kind of like concept or materials or like shape that you're thinking of for the next one?
A little bit. I'm thinking more about, doing these kind of stuff, but I'm thinking more like more bending. So that's as far
So
as
instead of puncture, now bend. So being more flexible after you have compromised here, maybe you're gonna be flexible as
because that's kind of like one thing that I'm always like thinking about is that when people see ceramics, it's so still, you know. It's so it could somehow, it's motionless and it looks so stiff. And I want to make something that looks like it could move.
So there'll be movement.
Not real movement.
Right, but like movement in your feeling and in the spirit
kind of, like,
of it. Yeah, this one looks like it has like kinetic, like potential energy move, like it might fall.
Right.
But
yes,
then
exactly.
Yours is... Next one is going to actually have some sort of implied movement in it,
That's
maybe.
what I'm thinking. But we'll see what
We'll
happens.
see. Who knows what's going to happen. So then if you have any questions, I'll put a link below to Emma Choi's work and put in your thoughts and comments about Korean ceramics. And if you actually have any pieces in your home, maybe put pictures of it in the comments below.
Yay!
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again next time, guys. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.